Hi, my name is Chris Little, and I am the host of The Lifestyle Chase. In 2018, I started this show to have meaningful conversations. I've interviewed over 100 different people, both in and out of the fitness industry. This podcast is something I'm incredibly proud of. Welcome to Season 4. Thanks for joining me. All right, so welcome to the Lifestyle Chase, and I have brought back a popular guest. Popular because he has done so many more podcast episodes than I have, and I will always have something to learn from him. And so I'm happy to bring back Jason Leenaarts to the show. Your last appearance was December 17th, 2019. So when we really think about that, thinking about it critically, that's a pretty convenient time to reflect on and to really encapsulate everything that's happened. But how are you today?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me back on. Yeah, December 2019. Nothing has happened in the world since then. I can't imagine we have anything to talk about. But no, this is great. I love spending the time with you. I love seeing how your life and your career is evolving. And I mean, you are just a man of many, 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 many talents. So I mean, my hat's off to you. I could learn just as much, if not more, from you. So thanks for the opportunity.
You bet. Something that kind of happened through the evolution of the show was I always thought that I'd just be the show that only had guests on maybe once, and I'd just keep going through and finding people. And then I found I was okay, there's a lot of different names, there's a lot of different personalities, and I'm finding that I'm losing the opportunity to really make meaningful connections with people. And so now it's I kind of take it from two directions. I want to meet as many people as possible, but I also want to make strong connections with as many of those people as possible. And it's a labor of love. It takes a lot of work to actually make it happen. But something that I wanted to mention, your show, you've started doing your 4 episode series. First of all, what kind of inspired that approach to it?
Yeah, I was getting close to my 300th episode, and I kept just sort of wrapping my head around, okay, where do I want to take it after 300? Do I want to take it anywhere? And you know this just as well as I do. There are some podcasts that are out there where they can monetize their efforts. I don't think that you and I, at least not anytime in the foreseeable future, will turn this into a Joe Rogan-esque, you know, um, project. And not that there's anything wrong with monetizing a podcast. It's just, we're not there yet. And all of my effort is put into my brick and mortar business. The majority of it is certainly. And I thought, well, one option is certainly that I could just hang my hat in a relative way and just keep all 300 episodes out there, and people can go back and enjoy them. Or if I decide to continue it, how would I continue it? And I thought, well, what are people not doing? What's something that I don't really see a lot of? And I knew that some people, when they released their podcast, they would release like a season. They would release like a season, and you'd have a lot of episodes sort of dump at one time, and people could binge them. And I thought, that's a cool idea. And then I thought, no, I want to do something different. So I just kind of stumbled on this idea of, what if you do like a 4-part series, and that way you get more, you as the listener get more exposure to the guest really gets more time to shine. And the one thing that I did that ran sort of counter to the way I did the show up till that point was, and I don't know if you're exactly the same way as this or not, but I normally had an idea in my mind. This is where I want to take this conversation with this guest. And so everything was sort of spearheaded by me. And I thought, well, in a way that could be doing disservice to the guest. So the first person to jump on board for the idea was Mike Howard. And Mike had been on my show several times before, and he's just a wonderful guy. And I said, so I'm trying this thing, and I don't know if you have an interest in doing this with me, but this is my thought. And he was game, and I said, I think what would be best is I want to talk about things that you want to talk about. So what are 4 topics that you want to discuss throughout this series that really, give you the time to shine? And I'll just riff on them. And so he had 4 topics, and I think we probably stayed true to that course. And that's where it started. And so that's just where I've just been sort of rolling it since then is, whoever I have in my mind is it's okay. Let's see what topics you've got. I very rarely disagree on the topics because again, this is what the guest is passionate about. And the onus is on me to make it a good conversation. And I've had a blast with it, but you and I were talking offline. The the downside to that is not every guest has that kind of time in their schedule to do that, and so it's been cool. It's been an experience, and at least in my mind, the plan is to probably carry this for a full 100 episodes. That would be 25 guests that I do it in this format before I decide, if I do something different. So we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, to kind of get people sort of refreshed with you, because like for perspective here, your last appearance was episode 88. Now we're on episode 198. So we've really covered a lot of different people in between episodes. So if
Yeah.
you were to reintroduce yourself based on everything that's happened in the last couple of years, how would you show up? Like how would you introduce yourself?
Man, probably just the same. I always try to think that I've got a really short way of doing this, and just keep it like the elevator pitch. But I'm the owner of Revolution Fitness and Therapy in good old Stowe, Ohio, which is Northeast Ohio for those that don't know, somewhere between Akron and Cleveland. If you follow, professional sports. Um, this is my brick and mortar baby. I do online training as well, but it's primarily the brick and mortar business. I'm the author of two books that you can find on Amazon in both Kindle and physical format. I host a little show called Revolutionary You, which has also enjoyed its time with my man on the other side of the microphone, Chris Little, and we've shared many guests between us. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a son, and just trying to do some good in the world. But that's who I am.
I love that. That was probably one of the best intros that I've ever heard. Like you've mastered it. You won the game. Um, so then when we think about like the fact that you're the owner of a brick and mortar facility, and I happened to do a bit of a deep dive preparing for this episode, just kind of listening to some of your recent podcast appearances and some of the shows that you've hosted. Um, what was it like to kind of face some of your weaknesses in a pandemic and really kind of have to work on that and kind of get out of that area, like as far as like business goes, kind of thing?
Sure. So it's definitely something I've talked about on my podcast before, and I'm more than happy to share it again because it's one of those things. I think sometimes the more you sort of relive what happened, the more you can sort of be, just acutely aware of the reality of how things went. And like a lot of things in life, you don't know till you know. And there were certain things about business that I thought, well, if I ever have to transition to a fully virtual landscape, this is how it would go, and this is how my clients would react. And most every thought that I had about how it would go was wrong. And so for us, this does bear mention because I know that every state and every country was very different, but I can only speak for the state of Ohio. We were in lockdown for just a handful of weeks, and I didn't have any trouble moving my clients to a virtual platform. Part of that was because um, we already had an online community where people can just sort of keep their dialogue going and just sort of keep up with whether it's little funny memes that we like to pass to each other or my client deep dives about troubleshooting that might be happening and things like that that we can share within the active clients. So to keep everybody together, that part was easy. The part that was hard was that and I'll fall on my sword when I say this because this was really error on my end is I gave clients a lot of options. Is number one, as the business owner, I had to be mindful of loss of revenue. And because this was such a scary time for so many people, there were many people who were in a position where they could continue to pay their dues to keep the business, up and going. Because in the words of one of my clients, he said, "When we get out of this, I want a gym to be able to come back to. So, keep charging my card." And then other people were like, you can start running my card when I have a place to come back to. And at full respect to wherever you stand, I had clients that lost income because of the way they got paid and things like that. So we had to be mindful of that too. And I thought in my mind that, most of my clients would want to sign up for actual like one-on-one Zoom sessions and stuff like that. So we could just kind of walk them through their workouts. And nobody wanted that. Not one client of mine wanted that. In hindsight, if we were to go through another series of lockdowns, I probably would be a bit more aggressive with making sure that we schedule that, because I mean, I had clients that just sort of mentally, they just kind of lost it. It was just so frightening for them. You know, in a world that's already just kind of chaotic enough as it is, you take the pandemic away, you forget that the last year and a half of this world actually happened. And I've already got clients that are just like, they're already kind of tight wound. You throw a pandemic into the middle of it, and it's like, I had clients that just sort of came unglued. And so I would be on these just, coaching calls, just kind of like this, just talking to people, clients just crying because they didn't know what was going to happen. And we didn't have any solutions. We just knew that there was going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. We just didn't know when or where, what that's going to look like. And so I consider Ohio one of the fortunate states, because I saw what other countries went through. I had a guest on my show who was from Australia just recently. They were in their fourth lockdown, and I thought, my God, we got off so easy compared to that. And so it was tough. Now, for me as the coach, I realized how much of my self-esteem, how much of my ego, for lack of a better term, was wrapped up in the success of this business. As in, when things are flying high, Jason's great. And when things are flying low, Jason's not so good. And it's hard not to take it on the chin as a coach and go, what's wrong with me? Why am I failing my clients? And Chris, this, like, however many clients you have, you look at all the people who are currently succeeding, they're hitting their personal best, and they're losing weight. Well, that's great. What about the people that aren't? You got to worry about those folks too. And it's easy to take, again, sort of take it on the chin and go, why is that person not losing weight? Why am I not able to, like, sort of like bring them to the promised land and give them just the right tools and all that other stuff? And so it was tough. It was tough to do and manage all that stuff in a virtual landscape. So um, we were, again, very fortunate that we got to come out of it and reopen our doors, and we came out swinging. I believe that I have to credit this to John Goodman as one of the people that said this right when everything was happening. He said, if you're one of the coaches that can survive this, that can get through this thing that we're going through, you're probably going to come out of this better than we went into it. And I'll be damned if he wasn't right, because we did. When we reopened our doors, we were just all guns blazing, and we were doing great before the lockdowns happened. So I consider myself fortunate on a host of different levels, but one that we were able to take what was trending to be a banner year before the pandemic started. It still ended up being a banner year in light of the pandemic. And then we head into this year, and we're gonna break more records. And the virus is still happening. And there are still things that we've had to manage here at the studio that have been difficult and sensitive. And it's when you've got, I've got a little over 100 clients right now. That's it's a lot of personalities and feelings and opinions that have to be respected and catered to. And not everybody's going to be on the same page together. And so, as a result, you end up hurting some feelings, and you end up kind of drawing a line in the sand that other people will not draw with you. And it's tough, but as a business owner, you have to make those decisions, and not every decision is comfortable. And a lot of them, you lose a lot of sleep thinking about what is the best thing for me to do for my community at large. So it's a long answer.
I love that answer. I mean, there's a lot of takeaways. I mean, I completely agree with you in that just our role with our clients, whether it be that we're distanced because of restrictions, or we're distanced because of change to people's lifestyles, like, our role correlates very directly with how we feel about ourselves, with our sense of purpose, with so many different things. And then so to go through something like a lockdown, or any kind of disagreement or turmoil or stress is going to impact us. So, like, the first question that I'll ask you is, like, what do you do to build yourself back up?
Well, it's interesting when everything was happening. There were a lot of things that were happening in my life at the same time the virus was happening, and you could sort of see the writing on the wall. Like, if you were a fly, sort of from the outside looking in, if you could sort of be the spectator of my life leading up to what was happening in March, chaos was like everywhere. And I'm one of these people that I get so laser focused on like the things that I'm doing that, I've always related it to just like keep, you're just spinning another plate. You add another plate to the mix that you're trying to spin and just keep everything going before something, falls and breaks. And inevitably something will break. And I'd been so laser focused on work that my marriage was suffering. And I've been pretty honest about it and pretty open about it in terms of like things that I've said in my writings and things that I've put routinely in the podcast. That it's like, I've read that when you look at life, you have these buckets, whether it be like a social bucket or an emotional bucket or a professional bucket, whatever it is, spiritual bucket, and you can't keep every bucket full. Some of them are going to be emptier than others. Some of them are going to be overflowing. Work was overflowing. My personal life was that we needed water in that bowl, and so when the pandemic happened, it sort of forced sort of a microscope on what was happening in my marriage, and it was like, okay, well, this is sort of a shit or get off the pot moment. We had the time to sort of work on the things that we needed to do for each other, my wife and I, and of course we have a toddler at home. And anyone who's a parent to a young child going through a pandemic where in a perfect world you've got your child out and doing things with their kids and all this other stuff, and when you confine a child of that age indoors and go, I'm sorry, we can't go to the park and we can't go to the restaurant and we can't go do these things because of this pandemic. It's tough. It's tough, certainly on my wife, because I at least got to come to work. Even when we were in lockdown, I would still come to work and get things done. And then, of course, once we were able to open our doors, then it's full bore ahead. So for myself, it actually was sort of a blessing in disguise, because I knew that work was going well, but things behind the scenes in my life weren't going as well. So it was an invitation to get back in therapy, which was something that was very beneficial for me because I needed that sounding board. I needed someone to talk to help me sort out the things in my head that were sort of going off the rails. And it let my wife and I have the time to sort of reconnect and go, okay, we want this. We want the marriage to work. We want this not just for our benefit, but for our family's benefit. And so once that compass got set straight, then everything else sort of, got straightened out too. So it was almost serendipitous the way that it happened. And my God, I can find silver lining in damn near everything. It just depends on how you look at it. And so, it was just one of those things where it's like, okay, well, the marriage is going better. That part of my life is going better. And now look what's happening with work. Well, I get to reopen my doors and I get to do these different things. So it's like, you forget about the things that give you a certain sense of grounding. And so for myself, it was therapy. It was the marriage being in the direction that it should be going. It's work going the direction that it should be going. And it gave me a better mindset about, okay, well, what am I learning from this about myself? And what am I watching my clients go through? And how can I relate this to what my clients are going through and how we're all struggling through these things together? And so, we as coaches, we have these conversations about self-care, and self-care could be a bubble bath, and self-care could be going to get a pedicure or manicure. Self-care could be a therapist. Self-care could be, how we look at our exercise. And so I had to learn to be kind of forgiving with my own exercise, because it's like, dude, you can't do it all. You can't do everything. Like, you can't run the numbers as high as you want to with your training. I'm not of the mindset that it's like, chain my ass to a treadmill and have me run for 45 minutes. That's not my, it's not my game. So it was just, learning where to sort of pull certain things back, because I needed to know where to set my focus. And it's never evolving process. It's like, I shared something with my wife recently. In fact, I think I was talking on my podcast about this too, somewhat recently with Lisa Lewis, and it was something talking about relationships in general. And it said if you've got a relationship that's been going on for decades, like 20, 30, 40 years, you have to think about essentially every decade you're changing as people. And it's like, if you're not the same people, as you were in like your first 10 years of marriage or whatever it was, you have to think about that. How are we changing as people? And I shared it with my wife, and my wife, definitely understood where I was coming from. But, think about that, just as individuals. I'm not the same person I was when I was in my 20s, not the same as I was in my 30s. I'm now, just getting past the midline of being in my 40s. And it's like, my God, I just keep changing. So I'm just trying to learn how to embrace that, like embrace that change, and just keep trying to move the needle in good directions.
Well, I mean, even for anybody that's kind of curious to see what change looks like, they can look at either one of our podcasts and
Hmm.
go back like in an increment of 100 episodes. Like go
Certainly.
back to episode 1 of yours, 100 of yours, 200 of yours kind of thing. And same thing for mine because it is both humbling and insightful and just helps us really create imagery or relatability to the idea that we are always evolving, and it's not like a fault. It is not something that is has a template to which a person must follow. It is just relative to what people go through and how they handle it and their environment and their support network. Something else that you kind of talked about that I wanted to bring up was just the fact, and it doesn't have to be in regard to anything present day, but just all the when we're handling conflict or when we're handling disagreement, it's a very heavy emotional thing to deal with, and especially with the integration of social media, because it makes it like you can argue about anything. You can argue about oranges and apples on the internet. But with that being said, that is something that is in our environment. That is something that causes a lot of stress for some people. It can be debilitating for some people. How do you manage it? How do you set up your environment so that you can move forward?
Sure. So Chris, I'm going to assume that you're going to relate to everything that I'm about to say. We're friends with a lot of the same people on social media. So if you just took a snapshot of our Facebook friends, we probably have a lot of friends in common. And like a lot of things, there are people on both sides of a given fence. You can look at that from a political standpoint. You can look at it from a method of exercise standpoint. You could look at it from a dietary methodology standpoint. And I've always appreciated dissenting opinions, because I might have an opinion about something and think, okay, I believe in my mind, based on my life experiences, that things should go this way. I believe as a coach, as a working professional, based on the success that I've seen with my clients, that a path to success looks like this, and that's fine. And then I'll get on the internet, this beast that is the internet, and I'll see somebody say something that runs completely counter to my belief system, and I sit back and I marinate on it, and I'm like, okay, I get that. It makes sense why that would happen for that person or under that set of circumstances. And I know people are sick of talking about the pandemic, but because it's still a very much an active thing right now, and people are very divided on how they feel about it, whether right or wrong, there are there are frequently times that I see people say certain things, and it doesn't have to be related to the pandemic, but because the pandemic's just sort of, part and parcel of this conversation. However you feel about masks, however you feel about vaccinations, however you feel about new variants and all that other stuff, there are certain opinions that I see out there, and I'll read them and I'll think about them, and I'll just start running through my mind. What is something that I could say to this person? Just to kind of to just because I'm curious. I'm genuinely, sincerely curious about certain things. I'm not the type of person to get on the internet and argue about stuff, but like I want to give this person my 2 cents. And I'm like driving in my car, I'm like running errands, and I'm like, I'm gonna say this. And I've got this perfectly crafted post that I'm gonna put down. And then I always have to stop myself and I'm like, okay, wait a second. Before you sit down and craft this big elaborate thing, how does this benefit your life? I'm asking myself this question. Jason, how does this benefit your life? Does it make you feel like, when you put this down, when you put it off and you hit return and you send it out into the world, will it make your life better? The answer is usually no. Will it gain you the respect of your peers? Maybe. Will it get you any more money in your pocket? Probably not. And then I just have to go, is it even fucking worth it? No. So I just let certain things lie. You know what I mean? It's just not, and I have to say that to myself about a lot of things. It's like, it's just not worth it. So when I see the people, the individuals of any ilk that have the time and the wherewithal and the skill, but time most especially, they have the time to do this. I'm like, my God, what what are you doing that you have that much time on your hands? because I'm trying to run a brick and mortar business and I'm trying to raise a family and I'm trying to, as my Oma said before she passed away, I'm trying to keep my nose clean. You know what I mean? And so it's one of those things where it's like, I don't have time for this conversation. So while I still appreciate dissenting opinions, and often I think they're absolutely hysterical, and I actually said this to a couple clients today, I love the internet. I love the internet because it is so entertaining and infuriating and all that other stuff. But I also said, we better be careful because at a certain point, the powers that be are going to start charging for this. Like Facebook's going to charge a cover charge for this much entertainment because they're like, hey, listen. And I was kind of having like a little bit of a banter with a client of mine. She goes, you mean aside from them stealing all of our data? I'm like, oh, data schmata. Who cares about data? They're going to be like, hey, listen, I know you want to log in today, but it's going to be $10 for today's entertainment. So yeah, I just have to sort of, like a lot of things, take it with a grain of salt, realize that not everybody's going to see things the way that I see them. That's kind of what makes the world turn. Social media just amplifies stuff, but it's not like things are really different. Somebody posted something the other day about the general sentiment that the quote unquote the world is more divided than it's ever been, and below that sentiment was a picture of two water fountains, and the one said white and the one said colored. The world's always had points of division, and most of them very inaccurate and unfair and unethical. So social media just sort of brought it up in a different lens, but it's tough. It's tough to kind of keep your emotions at bay. And so normally the conversations just kind of take place in the privacy of my home, and I don't get into that stuff on Facebook.
Definitely. Well, I mean, it's something that I believe probably catches a lot of people when they're not paying attention. Just like they could be going about their day. It could be like a 6 out of 10 day. Could be better, but could be a lot worse. And just one little statement or phrase or caption can just set a person off.
Oh
And
yeah.
like, I
And you
mean,
didn't even have control over it. Like you
exactly.
didn't even know that you were going to see it. And that's why, you know, I try to talk to my clients about how are you curating your feed? If you, if, and I'm just gonna pull something out of thin air. If if the feeling you get when you see a really fit person eating a slice of pizza is it leads you to binge on pizza, then you probably need to remove those people from your feed. Like if that doesn't make you feel good about yourself, get rid of it, because only you have control over that feed. Granted, there's going to be ads and stuff that are going to pop up, and you don't have any control over those necessarily. All you can do is just essentially unplug. But you decide what you want to see, and if it leaves you with a negative feeling, you gotta get away from it. And this includes people that we talk to face. If there's people that make you not feel good about yourself, you need to distance yourself from them. It's not healthy for you.
I mean, that was a huge lesson that I got from the last couple of years was just people that I was giving everything to, all my time, my energy, and then it was just they were like a take, take, take kind of person. And for me, being someone who inherently wants to help people as much as possible, I wasn't able to identify that, and I had no boundaries. Like I was just like, sure, just empty my cup here, bend over backwards for this person, just everything that I can do until I collapse.
Right.
And I started to get a bit more strict with how I was going to share my energy, with who was going to get my time. And it's like one of the most empowering things a person can do, and probably the thing that'll help most people survive. And when we look at it from an internet standpoint, the cool thing is when you geek out on this stuff, you can get browsers that block the ads.
Yeah.
You can get plugins that'll filter out what you see. Because at the end of the day, this is a piece of electronics. It is not relative to our essence in the world. It is not our legacy. This is an accessory to our life, and just kind of how you highlighted. Is this situation making my life better? Is it adding more value? Am I emotionally happier? Like we have to focus on that sometimes.
Right.
For me, a big thing has been like the connections that I've made during this time when like really all I could do was make connections through the internet, essentially through social media, through my podcast. If you reflect on your past year and a half, has there been a connection that's really stood out to you that kind of just pops into your head as we're talking?
I think for me, I was very fortunate to be connected with all the coaches that I'm connected with. And when I was kind of talking about that earlier, when I was talking about what we went through during lockdown, it it was very helpful for me mentally, emotionally, to see what other coaches were going through, because it's so easy for me to get lost in my little bubble, and just what happens in these four walls, that you tend to forget what other people are going through. And so, when I would see things about coaches that, they couldn't make the transition, in your case, you were working for a gym. You were an independent contractor at a gym. You had no control over what was happening. And essentially that's essentially what happened to, my staff as well, except I had staff that were, they were paid staff. It wasn't, they, some of them had their own clients, but most of them were here to help me. And it was like, all I can do is apply for like loan forgiveness so that I can at least get you a paycheck, to get you through until things are back up and running. And so I don't know if there was any one relationship. I just needed to sort of see the fitness industry as a whole so that I could understand, number one, how good I had it when I thought I didn't have it very well. And to sort of take like a little slice of humble pie and go, you need to be damn grateful for what you got. Because if you can't find gratitude there, you're not going to find it anywhere. Because other people, like good coaches and good businesses that couldn't survive this. I'm like, my God, what makes me so special? I just happen to live in the right state that I could pull it off. Because if I lived in New York, I don't know that I would have survived. If I lived in California, I don't know that I would have survived. And that was it was a hard thing to see, because I'm watching fantastic coaches saying, "I'm sorry, we're not going to be in business anymore." God, that sucks. It sucks for, not just for the coach, but for the clients, for the people that were patrons of that business. So yeah, I had to look at it as a whole, and I think that was probably the most beneficial thing that I could have been a part of, was to go, um, you know, just embrace who you can. And so it was people like you, it was conversations with people like you, where I'm like, how are you doing? Andrew Coates, how are you doing? And just trying to see where you can just reach out to people and just see, do you need anything? Can I do anything? Do you want to talk? You want to vent? Whatever I can do to help. Because, we're all on the same team, basically. So,
I mean, it's so true. Like it's something I can't promote enough is the fact that like we all went into this industry not in pursuit of great wealth or a Lamborghini. Like something in it caused us to want to have a role in somebody else's life, whether it be with athletic performance, whether it be with weight loss or strength. There is something that calls us back time and time again that motivates us to keep at it and just keep working, keep moving forward. And the only thing that we can do in correlation with one another is help one another. Like if we're here to take somebody out, like that is not going to help because there's already
right.
like in non-pandemic times, there's enough gyms that close. There's enough people that just leave the industry.
Sure.
And so it's just there is so much opportunity to support one another, and that's something that I've really loved about this past period of time. You've been someone who's straight up supported me, and just our conversations always feel like very meaningful and like we're actually making a connection and just like reaching out from across the internet, from across the border, and actually helping one another get up or feel proud or feel strong in the purpose of what we do.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, what sense does it make to have like your one hand lifting somebody up with your foot on somebody else's head just to make it happen? Like it doesn't, like that's not a good vision for me. Why wouldn't you just take both hands? I mean, God gave you both hands. Help two people, to the best of your ability. And whether that's a phone call or whether it's or whatever, just whatever it is that you can do. My God, think of it something as simple as this. When we saw what happened with the hospitality industry, like food and beverage, I saw, and I can't say I came up with this idea on my own, but I saw people saying things like, yeah, I'm tipping my server 50%, or I'm tipping my server the cost of my meal. That's amazing. Do that. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people lost their jobs. And so it was like, well, yeah, that's low hanging fruit. Why wouldn't you do that? So yeah, I mean, and again, it all depends on how you want to look at things. I saw a lot of great things come out of people when they were forced to do better. And it really makes you sort of take a look in the mirror and go, then why wouldn't I do better? Why wouldn't I be better? So yeah, I mean, I think it's a global thing.
Absolutely. Something that I've noticed in your social media as of late is just the growth of your team at RevFit. Like having other players in the mix, other people that are having such a pivotal role in people's lives. What has that been like to watch that and to kind of see that come to fruition and to see other people grow through their different evolutions?
Well, the short answer is it's awesome. The much longer answer is this. I've been fortunate that I'm not very far away from a local university. And through their exercise physiology program and through one of the professors that I have a good working relationship with, I've had sort of an open door access to intern opportunities. And so normally, what'll happen or what's happened, you know, uh, a few times so far in the last 3 or 4 years of this business is we'll get an intern who comes in and kind of gets a feel for how we operate this business. And not everybody who's majoring in exercise physiology wants to go this route. Not everybody wants to be a business owner. They might want to be a physical therapist, or they might want to go into cardiac rehab, or they might want to go work for a team somewhere. So when I've had the opportunity to talk to these students to tell them this is what I do and this is my background and this is how my business has grown, I've had some people that say, I want to check that place out. I want to help you out. And we've had a really good run of success with the interns from this school. And one of the things that I had to, as a bridge I had to cross professionally, was the fact that we run two training blocks here at the studio. So we run a block that goes from 5:30 in the morning until about 10, and then we shut down operations from 10 until about 2:30. And then the next training block goes from about 2:30 to 5:30. And that's basically the way that our week runs, with just a little bit of flexibility there. And then like a 7 to 9 morning shift on Saturdays. And that's how my business has operated for the past probably 3 years. Yeah, I think about 3 years. And so physically, I know that I can work a shift by myself, but physically, I shouldn't be working it by myself because it's hard. It's hard on my body, and I'm not a spring chicken anymore. So I leave my house at uh, 4:45 in the morning every day, and I get here by a little bit after 5, and it's all guns blazing for 12, 13 hours. And that's 12, 13 hours that we're kicking ass over here, but it's also 12, 13 hours that I don't see my family. And so I had to have some pretty hard cutoffs to when I stopped training. And because I knew that physically I was starting to kind of pay a price and I could tell it was taking a toll on my body, it was like, okay, well, financially, can I afford to pay to, have somebody help me? Because if another coach is on the floor, that helps us move through the flow of the room. And when we're seeing, upwards of 20-ish, clients through each training block and upwards of 40 some clients a day, it's a lot of movement. It's a lot of orchestration, making sure that like Susie's over here with her 30-pound dumbbell and she's squatting, and Billy's over here and he's got the lat pull down set for his pull downs. And because of the virus, which I know the CDC, the jury's out about this, but we're cleaning like freaks. We're cleaning everything before the next client touches it. So it was just a lot of movement that was happening. So I'm like, okay, well, financially, I need to make it work. I need to have a coach with me on every shift, because it's takes some of the pressure off of me, and let's make it happen. And so I pay what I believe is a pretty good wage. to my clients or my coaches, even though I know that it's only, part-time work. I encourage them to build clienteles of their own, and I know how hard it is to do that. And so it's just been cool. One person that you haven't seen yet, and I'll probably be, you know, promoting them here in about a month, is I have a gentleman who's a coach here, and his name is Ryan. And Ryan started as a client when he was 16 years old, and he came here because he needed to bulk up to be able to participate in track and field. And he just completely embraced this culture. He fell in love with being at the gym. He fell in love with working out. He'd had a very negative experience at a local gym, and this completely turned it on its head because I mean, we're crazy. We're crazy here. So he embraced all of it. He put on close to 30-ish pounds of mass, good lean mass, over the span of a couple of years, and just said, I think this is what I want to do. I think I want to coach people. So I brought him on staff, and he's been great because he knows this place. He knows how this place runs. He knows the flow. He knows the people. And so now it's just, how do we turn him into a coach? So he's getting his certifications and all that stuff right now, so that we can build him up. But I mean, like, I'm really proud of that because, like, I remember how it started. So it's things like that that it's like, wow, how cool to be a part of that and to see that happen in his life, and to see his parents' reaction to, like, Ryan really loves this. That's great. What a cool feeling. So yeah, it's just been awesome.
Well, and it's so important too because you highlighted how you needed to have change in order to focus on your personal life and to really water all the plants in life and not completely empty yourself so that you were just a shell of who you are when you went home.
Right.
What are the things that you've done on the other end of things, like with regards to prioritizing things week to week for your personal life? Like how have you structured in like stability there?
So my wife and I are in like a pretty good groove with each other now. So she's had a lot of things that she's had going on in her, for those that don't know, and some who already follow me, they know this, but my wife was groomed in theater. And so that's what she did all of her life, was she sang and she danced and she acted and all that stuff. And the theater industry was completely decimated through the virus. And so, it sort of made Marissa take a couple steps back and go, okay, these are the things that I want to focus on to better myself and to continue my education, and to, to do different things that would help Sebastian, our little guy. And so when I get home at work, I mean, that's our time. And over the last couple of years, we've developed a pretty significant love and affection of bourbon rye whiskey, that, however they all play together. And we've done a couple of jaunts down to the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky, and it's just been cool, and it's been a good bonding experience for both of us, just to kind of, be in that part of the country and to learn the history, and then just to have those bonding moments with a nice drink. And we're not the type to sit around and get hammered. It's just not our style. But it's just, it's nice to learn about the distilleries and just do something fun together. And so we have that. And of course, we have the weekends, which is also where we just sort of have our time to decompress and do what we need to do for the family. And so yeah, I mean, we try to protect that time at all costs. And that's why it was so important for me to sort of put a hard stop on the training blocks at work, because it was like, could I train later than what I do? Like, theoretically, of course I could. And I have clients that would love to train later in the day or whatever, but I'm like, I have to give time back to my family. Like, I have to. So that's where, you just have to sort of, you have to have healthy boundaries. And that was how it shaped up for me, or for us. So,
Well, I mean, and it's so true. Like, just the fact that, like, we're always going to have people that are going to want more of us, or they'd be happy if we gave them more of our time. But then we
right.
need to have the self awareness to sort of know where the limiters are and know at what point are we at our best and at what point do we start degrading and like the effect that that would have on everybody that we would see if we were to start just going right downhill kind of thing. With regards to that, when when you're kind of thinking about like how are you going to upgrade, how are you going to move forward or level up, like what are your resources that you go for? Like I know you read a lot of books and you probably listen to some other podcasts and stuff. Like what is your jam? What keeps you moving forward?
So I I want to make sure that I answer this as accurately as I can. I I love learning. I love learning whatever I can. You know just as well as I do, there are a lot of facets of fitness that you could be a part of, and conversations you could be a part of, and certifications that you could pick up and stuff like that. Um, I have probably had a more nutrition based focus on my business than I have an exercise based focus. I think I sort of found what I believe is sort of my sweet spot and how I like to train, which means that I have a given demographic and I really don't float too far out of that. So for those who are listening in that don't know exactly what I'm talking about, like if you have a child, for instance, who is a great baseball player and you want them to be like Division 1, I want them to get a scholarship, I want them to be the best of the best. I'm not your guy. I'm not the guy to get the best out of that child. If by comparison, you are a parent who says, my child wants to learn how to lift weights and wants to get a little bit more confident and needs like to know like what they're doing in a gym, uh, that's me. I'm your guy. And they're welcome here. And so it was learning that sort of that difference for myself. But I love learning nutrition. And so when I saw the different options that were available to me about what I could learn and what I could do with that knowledge, you know, I did precision nutrition and thought it was great. And prior to that, I had done ISSA's sport nutrition course, which was also written by John Berardi before he started precision nutrition. And I'd done all those things, and it was valuable for me at the time. But I wanted to take things to the next level, and so the next level in my mind was Mac Nutrition, and I just wrapped that up earlier this year, and it was really hard. I like it, it was very hard for me. And that's because like my background's not an exercise phys, and my background's not in dietetics. My degree's in business management. You know what I mean? And so I already felt kind of behind the curve. It was very challenging, very rewarding. I'm really glad that I passed. And just very, very thankful for the opportunity that I had through that organization. Um, and it was just cool. It was cool to sort of push myself to that level because, quite honestly, I found Mac Nutrition to be more challenging for me than anything I went through in college. Anything, hands down. But that's okay. That's how you get better. Um, Now it's more about kind of going back through, and I find myself wanting to see. Um, I want to get better at cueing. Like I feel like if somebody's doing something like a trap lift or a deadlift, even though I see it all day long, um, I want to be better at it. I want to have better cues. I want to be able to you've got the people that make that job easier on you. Like all you got to do is add 5 pounds and they're going to hit it. But then there's the people that get stuck for a long time, and it's like, okay, what tool am I not giving you that you need to get that next 5 pounds? And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. Is I'm kind of coming back probably a few paces to go, okay, I know how the lift works. How do I get better at coaching the lift? And so that's kind of where I'm at, is just trying to be a better coach. Um, and yeah, that's where it's at for me. But that's for me, it's as simple as kind of going through and digesting things that come from 3DMJ and digesting things that are coming from Lift the Bar, because I'm a member of that organization, and just seeing what I can learn, what I can apply, and what makes me better, what makes my clients better. So yeah.
Well, I love that, and I'll even reiterate with the max certification that you have. Like that is a tough one. I haven't personally taken it, but I've known like dozens of people who have just struggled through that one, and like they've prevailed. Some people might take longer to get through it, but it is tough. But it's
Mhm.
also something that I would vouch for. Like, I mean, I've heard nothing but good things about it. So, in a lot of cases, people only hear about the precision nutrition certification, but the Mac U one is pretty awesome. And I've had the opportunity to see Martin McDonald speak at a conference, He's quite the animated individual, but
Yes, he is.
I do believe that he knows his stuff and he knows what he's talking about. But
Oh,
something that I wanted to kind of segue into as we bring this episode to a close, you talk about how you refine yourself through exercise and nutrition, and we've already highlighted a few things that you've done to sort of improve your boundaries and your lifestyle. But aside from everything that we've talked about so far, what is something else that you are either aimed towards to improve, or that you've already gotten started in just yourself, you as a human being?
hmm. I would say right now for me, and it's interesting because I've been like sort of sitting on this idea of something that I've wanted to write for a while, but in writing it the way that I want to, I would need to actually get someone to help me with it, and I want to be respectful of their time. But I am always someone who has struggled with finances. And growing up, it was one of those things where my father said, money burns a hole in your pocket. And it did. Like I was spending money as fast as I could get it with no real value to like, I just wanted to have the thing. And so you end up looking around at your lot and you're like, well, I have lots of things, but do I have a lot of happiness? Like where do we draw the line? And so as business has gotten better, sort of like the whole adage of more money, more problems, when you have enough money to do certain things, if you're not careful, you just do more things. And it's not always the most responsible thing to do. And because I'm always trying to draw parallels between the things that I struggle with and the things that I see my clients struggle with, it, it's a it's a pretty nice parallel, although it's still apples and oranges. It's a pretty nice parallel to look at how we might struggle with money versus how we might struggle with food. And so this big thing that I want to write, I actually want to get my help from my accountant, who's been sort of instrumental in helping me understand like how to make money work in a more productive manner. And I don't mean so much in investments because that's not the conversation, but just being more responsible with the money that I have so that it's going to the right places. And that it's kind of like the conversation that I was having with myself about adding in staff and giving them more hours and all that other stuff. Is it's like the money's there, do the right thing with the money, because you don't want to lose good help because you didn't want, you didn't give them the hours, you didn't give them the opportunity, you didn't give them a competitive wage. And so it's been a very slow process of sort of learning and understanding how do I make this all work. And so there's been things that it's very fresh for me, but I'm having to change a lot of things about the way that I do my billing here at the studio and the way that I'm handling payroll processes and the way that my business now operates as a taxable corporation because of our amount of revenue, that it's all sort of new. And I'm trying to like embrace it and appreciate it rather than get all disgruntled and be like, well, why do I have to pay X amount in those taxes? And, why didn't I know that? I'm just trying to be really grateful for the fact that it's like, yeah, but remember when you had nothing? Remember when you only had one client and now you have over 100 clients? Like, remember what you came from. And so learning that has been, um, it's very new. And like when I say this, like some of this stuff is like only been happening over like the past few weeks, where it's like changing some of these billing processes and understanding like how this is going to affect payroll is all very new. It's just kind of part of the growing pains. But that's kind of my thing right now, is just getting a better understanding of the what to do with the revenue of this business so that the business functions the best way that it can. And then, obviously seeing how that affects, my personal life, because, I'm breadwinner. So it's got to be able to afford, our lives as well. So it's cool. It's a challenge. I don't enjoy all of it, but why would I? It's kind of like dieting. Why would you enjoy all of it? Sometimes you just have to do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love that. And it kind of segues into one of my experiences that I've had in the last couple of years is like there's been so many unexpected conversations that I've had, and one of them was with a business owner local to Edmonton that basically retired at age 35. And we've had a few conversations, and some of the things that they've really hammered home for me are that people often ask these people who have made it, essentially, like, what could I possibly invest in that would give me the greatest return? And the advice that this business owner gives is invest in yourself. Like take like not from like a hippy dippy perspective, but like take a chance and see how much you can generate if you actually like put the chips on you, not on like some other entity, not on like Bitcoin, not on Tesla, but actually like see what you're capable of. Because like just imagine looking at some of our most well-known business owners in the world, and seeing their day one, and thinking about like, okay, like what did it take for them to believe in themselves? Like it probably wasn't easy. There's probably a lot of odds against them. There's probably a lot of doubters. Like if we think about Amazon, who would have thought that that would be a thing? Like now we think it's
Sure.
normal because we're all using it. But before, he started off like selling books through the internet. Like that was
Hmm.
it. And then it was just like finding commodities that could be highly inventoried, like CDs and everything that has like large vast libraries, and just finding a concept and running with it. And
Right.
it just the momentum from that. And so hopefully people look at that, and then they look at like, rather than focusing on the money coming in, just like focusing on how often are we letting money leave, and not paying attention. Like how often we can take coffee, for example. Like you can get a tin of ground coffee for like maybe $6 to $8 that would last like one person probably a month,
Hmm.
versus if they had a coffee a day and spent $2 to $5 like that. The contrast is humbling if somebody actually takes out a spreadsheet and
Yeah.
calculates it out, and then realizes like, oh, that was just one aspect of my day that was like a huge hole in the tank kind of thing.
That's right.
But to get us back on track here as we transition to the end, there's a couple questions that I got for you. So one
Okay.
of them is, it always puts people on the spot, has them think on their toes. But I have my guests give a challenge to the audience. I want it to be something that's unique to you, something that you think will really enhance their life today. And if it's cliche, roll with it. But you essentially are going to just give a challenge to the audience and be like, your challenge for the day is, and just dish it out to them.
Sure. The next time you go to a restaurant, if you see someone eating by themselves, buy their meal. If you can do it anonymously, that would be the preference. I've been in a couple of scenarios where I've gone to pay for the person, and the person that's taking the money at the register said, "Hey, by the way, he's buying your lunch," which I would prefer. I prefer there be no fanfare for it. I love buying lunch for older ladies that are sitting by themselves, because you don't know what their story is. All you know is they're sitting there by themselves. They're enjoying their breakfast or their lunch or whatever. Um, of course, you can always do coffee. If you're in a line buying your $2 to $5 coffee, pay for the person behind you. But I like actually being in a restaurant and seeing that someone is eating by themselves, paying their meal or paying for their meal, and then covering the tip. And then I prefer no fanfare. I prefer for them not to know that I'm the one that did it, or at least me be out of the restaurant by time they find out. But yeah, I try to do that whenever possible. So that's my challenge to your listeners, is to either today or the next time you go to a restaurant, single out the person that's eating by themselves, and if you can do it as anonymously as possible, buy their lunch for them or buy their meal.
I love that. And then something else that I wanted to ask, because I recently put out a question on my Instagram, and it basically asked people what kind of advice would they give to the 2019 version of themselves. And we reflected on how our last interview together on this show was December 2019. And so if you could look back to that version of you, what would your advice be?
I think I'm going to come back to something that I had said when I was talking about the finances. Like a lot of things in life, you have a choice to how you're going to react about things. If you have a lot of bills that are piling up or expenses that you didn't expect that you were going to have, it's easy to have resentment about those things, or to get down on yourself and just kind of feel like you've been dealt a raw deal. Be grateful that you have that opportunity. to just go through it. Be grateful that you're in a position where you can probably afford to pay them, even if it puts you in an uncomfortable position for a short amount of time. Um, but I try to have a gratitude first approach. And of course, I'm a fully flawed human being who doesn't always remember to be grateful. I'm also an only child, which means I've been spoiled for most of my life, and I definitely forget to be grateful. But I try to keep that as front of mind as possible. Like, even going back to the previous thing that we were just talking about, like if I'm in a position to buy someone sitting by themselves their lunch, plus afford my own, plus cover the tip, it's a pretty good life. I'm not independently wealthy. I still have to work my ass off for what I've got. But I'm very fortunate, and I'm very lucky, and I'm very grateful. And I'm grateful to be able to, be a guest on a podcast with someone I have a lot of love and admiration for. And before I forget, because I told myself you can't forget to do this. For those of you who are listening to this, if you ever have a need for a commercial spot or something that advertises your business or your brand, please, please, please reach out to Chris. Chris, and I've told you this, and now I get to say it on the air. You put together a commercial for my business that is one of the most touching things that anyone has ever, ever, ever done for me. And the fact that it not only represents is a sort of a snapshot of a conversation that I actually had with you on this show before, back in December of 2019. But it shows a snapshot of people who, they personify what this business stands for. You finished it with a very short clip of my oldest son, Jackson, doing a trap lift. For those that don't know, my oldest has autism. So just the fact that he can do a trap lift is amazing by itself. But Chris, I love you, man. When I see what you do, when I see all the things that you're capable of, I'm like, I'm so glad that I know him. So yeah, I didn't want to get off this call without saying that. So thank you for who you are. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for letting me be a part of your world. But I hope that all of your talents get put to use.
That is awesome, and I appreciate that, and I love you too. Um, we're definitely going to have all of the links for people to track you down. Your Instagram handle will be all over you if people watch the video version, and everything is going to be in the episode description. With all of that being said, I'd like to thank you so much for coming back to the show. It's been a pleasure to have you. Thank
Thanks for
you.
having me.